Week 10 was an interesting one for NFL DFS with some interesting chalk. Brandon was looking at the numbers from roster rates from yesterday, and things were a bit different from expected there. There were some fun comebacks from guys like Cam Newton. We got to see Russell Wilson once again, although it wasn't full Russell Wilson. And unfortunately, some big injuries to discuss as well. We're going to break things down for today and let you know the big takeaways from a DFS perspective. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, week 10 in the books now. Pretty interesting and weird slate, I would say, given all the weird blowouts and stuff like that. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I was fully ready to start the show, kind of picking on you because I got the better of you in a lot of spots this week. We played in a dynasty league. We played in a redraft league, our head-to-head that we do for the show, snake draft that we do with JJ Zacharyson. I beat you in all those. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure had you known that entering the week, you would have figured you had a bad week, but you had an amazing week in DFS. You were on a lot of the top plays, the plays that kind of came through. Really good lineup construction. So I wanted to kind of tease you, and I know I kind of did anyway, but I don't think you care after what you did with your DFS lineup. So,
well, I mean, I care because it's a recency bias thing because so I knew about the DFS stuff earlier in the day, but I'd been doing stuff. I was out, and I checked the dynasty league, and I checked our head-to-head after, and so it was oh, I knew about. But the DFS stuff was baked in, and then I circle back around and suddenly see, oh, I lost the head-to-head. I lost the dynasty, and didn't just lose. I got torched. It was bad. Yeah. So it was rough, and it did kind of bring things down a bit. So you can still gloat because I still feel the pain of those losses.
Yeah. I mean, and hey, for the Dynasty League, it's not decided yet. You still have George Kittle, but you need to make up
70 points from George Kittle.
Yeah, but that's Matthew Stafford still. So you never know, man. You never know. Kittle's been trending up, so we won't be able to talk about his week 10 usage yet on the show. But
no,
maybe we'll talk about the 80-point game from Kittle.
Yes, exactly. But yesterday was good. It was nice because I feel so my three best lineups this year have all been Dak with CeeDee Lamb, because there were two yesterday, two separate slates, the main and the 1 p.m. only, and then a couple weeks ago too. So I feel like I'm now obligated to roster CeeDee Lamb and Dak every single week. If they're not in the slate, I might consider not going there. But I feel like I would still have to leave an obligatory space open on my lineups to pay respect to
honor
the greatest combination on the planet.
Yeah. Like that. And it's weird because, and we don't really talk about this stuff, even when things go well, but, I had a solid week too. And we had, I feel a pretty good read on the slate overall, and that's despite a ton of blowouts. But that the Cowboys and Falcons game, we both liked a lot. Unfortunately, only one side of it came to play. Right. But, it made me feel good about the process. And after, honestly, a really mediocre start to the season, the sheer fact of, just better results from the same process makes me feel better about the process. And a big part of that process.
Yeah. It makes you feel better about your process retroactively, saying, okay, no, I was doing the right stuff before.
Yeah. And again, a big part of our process is, at least mine, but I feel a little bit more for you even, is narrowing down that core that we go to. And I was building lineups Sunday morning, and I was I should probably have some Tom Brady because the spot's really good. And the matchup, at least, the surrounding circumstance wasn't, and I didn't get there, and it worked out, and Tom Brady was extremely chalky, which was unexpected I don't think either of us really saw that coming. But it just makes me feel better about the sort of process based approach, a bit of a tighter core, because whenever it does work out, it makes up for the mistakes that you have whenever your core doesn't pan out. So I feel pretty good.
One other thing
over the
that
past few
I think
weeks.
is a takeaway from what you were saying about the roster rates, because it wasn't just Brady. Mike Evans is 40% rostered in Sunday Million. We talked a
Yeah.
lot about how late breaking news is often undervalued in DFS. And I think that we could also say that if there is a guy talked up all week as being a great play, even if he becomes a less great play as the week goes along, people are still going to use him pretty heavily because, like, Evans was being pumped up in part because of Chris Godwin and the
Yeah.
likelihood Godwin's going to sit. And Godwin played, and Evans is still a very good play. Like, this is not, saying you shouldn't have, but like, should he have been on 40% of rosters? Probably not.
And James Conner as well, 25%. So we had Dearness Johnson at about 45% in the Sunday Million. James Conner was the second most popular running back in the Sunday Million at 25%. And again, Conner wasn't a bad play.
No.
We still could have projected the big workload, but he became a less good play because we talked about him last week on the Monday show as, being someone who could really change the slate. And that changed by Sunday. And I've been talking a lot about not sort of going away from the best process plays that we identify Monday, but running back this week was a bit of a different ball game because we for sure had Mark Ingram. Najee Harris got bumped down, so it did change the way that I sort of viewed things. But
Right.
It just goes to the point you were making
Right.
with James Conner kind of being the guy early on in the week, throughout the
Yeah.
week, and he still was one of the guys come Sunday, despite the fact that you and I both bumped him down ourselves.
Like we talked about this on Friday. Like I think we had Ingram above Connor once we knew Kyler might not play. I think that
by
was where
Friday
we wound up.
did.
Yeah. And like, I think that's kind of the weight of the early week stuff. So probably something to keep in mind. If you see a player who is getting steamed up earlier on in the week, getting a lot of talk at that point, account for that if their situation becomes less favorable, I guess is the way that I'd say that. We'll talk about our headliner here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder, with the NBA season fully underway, FanDuel's free over-under contest is also underway. It is simple. Head over to FanDuel.com/over-under and choose either over or under each listed prop. You can make free picks for a chance to win a share of $5,000. All you have to do is make your picks on FanDuel before every NBA on TNT broadcast for your shot at a big payday. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Let's start things off here with our headliner from week number 10. And unfortunately, this is a bummer one. We love Aaron Jones in this podcast. We don't tend to use him a lot in DFS because his role is flawed, but he's a fun player, really fun guy. He got hurt late in their game against the Seahawks, the Packers. AJ Dillon wound up having 21 carries. He had 2 targets, 66 yards rushing, 62 through the air, 51% snap rate. He also had 10 of 18 red zone chances for the team. All 10 were carries. That was even with Jones playing for, more than half the game. It sounds like Jones is going to miss at least a couple weeks. I had a sprained MCL, and I think I read somewhere that he had missed 2 games with that same injury previously. So we're going to get AJ Dillon with no Aaron Jones. Now, the main slate's not up yet, so we can't play Name That Salary. We can play Name That Salary in theory, and then we can check back on it later. So, Brandon, based on your projected role for AJ Dillon, name that salary in week number 11.
Yeah, so you make a good point with Aaron Jones, where we both like him as a player. We like the talent, but the role has not always been enough. For a brief moment with the transition from Jamal Williams to AJ Dillon kind of being the backup, we've been able to shed those fears a little bit, but that has come back for Aaron Jones this season. I think that you could make the case that pretty easily that AJ Dillon has a better role than Aaron Jones had with them both healthy, because we're looking at basically Patrick Taylor, playing behind AJ Dillon now. Taylor, not the most athletic, not the most productive back, undrafted out of Memphis, if I'm not mistaken there.
Oh man, Memphis though. Memphis running back.
Yeah. But yeah, like there's not as much competition behind Dillon without Jones as there was with Jones with Dillon healthy. So I think you could basically say that the role is going to be better for Dillon. I'm not saying he's a better player. I'm not guaranteeing as much passing work, but if you take everything into consideration, I think Dillon within this offense could be in the mid 7,000 range, and I think that would be justified. I don't think he can be quite as high as Aaron Jones because I don't know if the passing game work is there. He kind of made a face, so do you think I'm way off base there?
Well, not way off base, but so like we were talking about how we think that AJ Dillon's role will be better than the role Aaron Jones had the past couple weeks. And in our heads, I think we've been putting Aaron Jones around $7,500. He was way over that from an actual salary perspective, but like I thought his role was worth around 75. So like if we take that and juice it up a bit, I think 8,000 ish is probably more appropriate for AJ Dillon, just because like if we're taking Jones' role and juicing it up, I think that's probably where I'd wind up.
Yeah, I could see that. I wouldn't hate it. I guess maybe that means that you would be higher in theory on AJ Dillon's path to receiving work than I might be. So is that kind of the way that you see it? You think that because I mean, and it's not fair to do this necessarily, but he's at a 6% target share this season,
right?
Jones at 15%. That the receiving share for Jones is a big part of what gives him value. So
yeah,
if you kind of had to ballpark what you think his Dillon's target share would be moving forward, what would you put that near?
So he ran 10 routes this week with Jones playing a good chunk of that game. Looking back at other games here, I think he had a 4-target game recently. Was that last week that he had that? So AJ Dillon had he had 4 targets last week. He said 2, 4. So he can get like, I would say, I think that like a range of 2 to 5, which is a wide range, but like I think 2 to 5 is probably appropriate. So yeah, maybe bump it down a bit. I think that's probably fair. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so basically the issue with Aaron Jones is that he's always salaried at like 85 and we view him more, closer to 75. And even though I say Dillon's in a better spot than Jones, I still think like mid sevens, like 76, 77 would probably be the range for him, just because I don't know if that receiving work is going to be there. And we don't really like to play backs at high salaries who are more touchdown dependent. And you're just by nature more touchdown dependent for outbursts and fantasy points if you're not going to be, as involved. From a pass game standpoint, of course, he caught the long pass yesterday. He's got that ability, but you don't really want to bank on one sort of busted play. And you want that volume to be there, which it can be, but I think that's really the only concern for Dillon.
And I think it's
moving forward.
Our concern is not ability in the passing game. It's will he get the opportunity? And because like he's looked good when he's gotten those chances. It's more so like, will they try to, move those elsewhere? So that could be good for, I don't know, like Alan Lazard, someone like that, to get some more, but like, who cares? So I think that's kind of potentially the thing there. So they get Minnesota next week on the road. That'll be a pretty fun game for the main slate. So I think that'll be pretty enticing. I think you've talked me down to 78 as being the salary for AJ Dillon this week.
Yes. I mean, all things considered, we're in the same ballpark with Dillon. Going to be one of the better plays presumably it's hard without the slate.
I'd bet that he's 7,000 because that's where they put James Conner last week in a similar situation.
Yeah, if he's 7,000, I think he's going to shape up as one of the preliminarily best plays.
Yeah.
And with the difference between he and Connor would be that we're not like waiting to hear about the quarterback situation with him.
Right.
So
it's not Colt McCoy.
It's going to take
Chris Trevler.
Yeah, it would take a lot to bump down Dillon.
Yeah.
Unless they come out and say we're not going to throw him the ball, which they won't. They're not going to say that. So.
Right. And like Arizona had all the receiver injuries too, which hurts offensive efficiency. So yeah, I think the factors combine to make it a better situation for sure for AJ Dillon. I'm sure we'll talk more about him on Thursday, but again, I'm guessing he'll be around 7,000 and we think he's closer to the high sevens from a salary perspective. Let's talk about some other injuries here from the week 10 slate. Dallas Goedert ruled out in the second quarter with a head injury. It led to the targets being concentrated between Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins. They both had 6, which unfortunately was like half of the team's total, actually more than half. I think it was 23 and they had 12. Smith scored twice. He had 66 yards, but like, it's just so hard to have like a 120-yard, 2-touchdown ceiling when the team's throwing 12 times a game. So that's tough. But like it is going to be a really good like market share. So where are we at on Devontae Smith if Dallas Goedert misses time?
So yeah, I have a 27% target share this week with those 6 targets, 42% of the air yards, 3 downfield, 2 end zone targets. Again, you're the comparison guy. You're much better with comps, but with this run heavy offense and Devontae Smith's skill set and good target share but low volume, I'm getting like Marquise Brown of years past vibes from this offense overall, where you kind of you can talk yourself into the path for a big ceiling game from Devontae Smith, but he's going to have to do it on his 4 to 6, maybe 7 targets, cash in on the downfield work. But outside of that, you really are setting yourself up for a very easy, a very wide path to failure. So that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Would you agree with that?
It's a wide path to failure, but also like the upside's not as high because like you can't go for 202 if your team's not going to get 200 yards passing overall. So like I think that it's a combination of two things. I'm not saying like no, you can't use him. It's more so like I can't get excited despite the fact that he looks really good, despite the fact that he's got this massive target share, despite the fact that he's playing really well. Like I can't get excited, I guess is the way that I'd phrase it.
Yeah, that's how I felt basically to a T with Marquise Brown in
for sure
recent seasons. Not this season. It's very different for him.
I think it's pretty good comp.
Yeah, just a run heavy offense with a quarterback who probably is going to run the ball himself a good bit. Fall shy of 200 yards very frequently. That's just tough. You know, we don't care about passing yards so much with quarterbacks. Like obviously we want them. We want rushing and we want touchdown conversion. But that really just straps the entire pass catching core, and it really takes them out of play on full slates.
So like from an estimation perspective, you want to get like a vibe check basically on where I'm at with him. I would say he was 62, I think, this week. I'd keep him there. Like, I don't think anything changed, despite the fact that more targets. It's like you open up a 23% target share in the offense, that amounts to like 4 targets in this offense, which stinks. So I'd say same standing pat, which stinks.
Yeah, I would say I don't think he realistically would go down from where he was after a 2 touchdown game, but no, I wouldn't want to bump him up either.
No, I agree. Other injury from Sunday slate was Cordell Patterson hurt his ankle against the Cowboys and didn't return. Hard to tell if he could have returned if the game had not been just like some massive blowout. But like it doesn't matter. Like we don't know. But with Cordell out, Wayne Gallman did lead in snaps. That's misleading because 7 of his 15 carries came in the fourth quarter when Josh Rosen was at quarterback. So I'm not sure if Gallman has leapfrogged Mike Davis. I would doubt that, but like, not sure it matters, honestly. So if Cordell misses time, are you in on Mike Davis or Wayne Gallman here, or do we just avoid this backfield altogether?
It pains me to say, as apparently Matt Ryan's biggest fan, but I think that there's not enough here with this offense. I still think that there's a case to be made for Kyle Pitts on any slate, but outside of him, I don't think that there would be anything within this offense that would show me enough on a full slate to want to get there. So I can't really I can't vouch for this offense, even though I love Matt Ryan and I think he's trending up. But they do play Thursday against the Patriots, so that will be
no Cordell. Which
revenge,
means my dynasty
would have been a revenge game.
Is going to be even worse. Oh, I forgot about that. You're right. Cordell has like 63 revenge games, which is good for him. I think the issue we're going to have is that Gallman's going to take some early down work. Like we can expect Mike Davis to get some passing game work, but the way you get, points is via passing game work, yardage, and touchdowns. I don't think he's going to get the yardage, and if he gets the passing game work, they're probably not going to score a lot of touchdowns. So I think even if we do take Cordell out of the equation, it's still a really rough spot, and I would not be super inclined towards Mike Davis regardless.
Yeah. I don't know how many games are going to be on the main slate, but there's only 2 teams on bye, so probably like 12, 13, I guess 13, no, 12. I don't know what would have to happen at running back.
No,
What?
it'd have to get crazy. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Okay, so let's move now to rule changes here and talk about what we saw there in week number 10. Cam Newton made his debut yesterday. He scored 2 short touchdowns really early on playing goal line packages. One of those is rushing, and that's noteworthy because that's one of the threats that he would potentially pose to Christian McCaffrey if he could lose some goal line work if Cam's running. We talked about that with Damian Harris at like the end of the preseason. Like, oh man, Cam's gone. Damian Harris is going to have like 97 touchdowns. But I think like with McCaffrey, he still got 31% of the red zone chances in this game. And that number could have been higher because Chuba Hubbard got a late touchdown. Game was out of hand. They had taken him out to keep him rested. So 2 questions here. The first one is, if we assume Cam starts, which I bet he probably does in week 11, how does it alter your view of McCaffrey? And does Cam starting elevate the pass catchers for you above where they were with PJ Walker?
I mean, let's be clear. Let's go with the pass catchers first. There's one pass catcher I would consider, and it's DJ Moore.
Pass catcher, you're right. Yeah.
I don't think that it hurts from an efficiency standpoint because, like, I actually wrote a piece for numberFire entering the season about DJ Moore's potential with Sam Darnold, and basically DJ Moore has outperformed teammates with virtually every quarterback he's ever had, which has not been the best list. So I still think that the arrow is slightly more up than it is down with Cam Newton. I would assume, though, this is something I could talk about. I had this in the philosophy changes section.
Sure.
With the Panthers, over the past 4 games, they're 8th in pace, excluding garbage time plays, which is when your pre-snap win probability is either lower than 20% or higher than 80%. So within basically a winnable game script, they're up to 8th in pace and down to 30th in pass rate over the past 4 games.
Yeah.
Prior to that, they were 29th in pace, again, now 8th, and they were 18th in pass rate, down to 30th. If Cam Newton starts, you would expect that they're down in like the bottom 3 in pass rate. They might play a little bit faster. So I don't think that it's enough to bump up DJ Moore by any means, just from an efficiency standpoint, because the volume never is going to be that high. So that's how I would view DJ Moore, which is, it sucks because we love DJ Moore. Yeah. As for McCaffrey, watching that game, I saw a good bit of it on Red Zone. He almost scored multiple times. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that won't really show up. People probably won't talk about enough with Cam Newton there, especially if Newton is named the starter, which I would presume would happen. So I think McCaffrey still has plenty of touchdown upside. Of course, that goes down a bit, but if they move the ball better, then they're in the red zone more. So I kind of view it as like a overall probably a net wash for McCaffrey, where he's still amazing.
Yeah.
And I know I'm talking a lot about this, but we're talking about the best running back fantasy asset in football. So I think it's worth discussing all the different angles. So I would say it's about neutral for McCaffrey with some pluses and minuses, but ultimately coming out to like a wash.
I think it's either a wash or a slight positive, despite the fact that they may lose some goal line work, just because of what you said, because they'll have more goal line chances with Cam than PJ Walker. I basically wrote off this offense when it was PJ Walker starting, whereas with Cam, it's like you can keep them afloat, you can keep them relevant. So I think that's enough where I'm going to be there because of that. So to me, I think it is a slight positive. They're facing Washington this week. Name that salary of McCaffrey if we assume Cam starts in that game.
I'd say probably just because he is who he is, I would say he was 9,000 this week. I'd say 10,000.
I think 9.5, 10, somewhere in there. I know it's a big range too, but
it is, but he's going to go up.
Yeah.
From 9,000. I would say that if he's 10, I'm fine with it. Anything outside of that, I'd be a little bit more wary.
Right.
But again, that I think it's just like, I think he was undersalaried. I think he was fairly salaried for the potential concerns, but seeing what he did again this week, those concerns are all gone. So I'm cool to kind of take the take the top off or remove the tarp of concern with McCaffrey.
The tarp of concern. I've never heard that before, but I like
I don't know.
it.
There's probably something out there that I was trying to say, but
we're gonna keep that. That's gonna work.
Hey,
that's
hey,
a
man,
thing now.
It's 9:25 Eastern, and it was a long night of prep to try to get up to speed with all these changes. So
I have no coffee here. It's 6:25. I'm at an Airbnb in Seattle. And there's no coffee, so I am drinking tea, which I don't do. So I feel you. I get that for sure.
Yeah, that's Stephon Diggs. If there's no coffee there,
well, there was. We drank it, so it's gone. Stephon Diggs. The week after we talked about how Emmanuel Sanders was creeping into being a 1B-ish type thing, Stephon Diggs said, "No, idiots." He got the wide receiver 1 treatment for the Bills against the Jets. 13 of 28 overall targets. He had 4 out of 6 red zone targets, 5 out of 10 downfield targets. That was the issue before, was that Manny was eating heavily into Stephon Diggs' downfield share. Diggs had a 24% target share in all games leading into this, 17% of target share in the 2 games post-bye. But now he showed that these games are within his range of outcomes. So, Brandon, are you changing how you view Stephon Diggs based on this game?
Yeah, because the fear of missing out with Diggs is back.
Yes.
Because it wasn't that he had a good game. It was that he had phenomenal usage.
Yeah.
Those are 2 very distinct differences. CeeDee Lamb had a good game this week. His usage wasn't necessarily phenomenal.
Correct.
Diggs getting this workload is the type of thing that makes him an outlier potentially each week. Again, I don't know if this will stick, but it's going to be it's got to trend up into this now that he's done this. So I'm not saying he's back to being someone I feel like I have to play no matter the salary.
Mm-hmm.
But I am changing the way that I view him because that fear of missing out is back.
Yeah. If you look at his overall shares now, like looking at the full season, he's at 28% in the red zone, 31% deep, which is still lower than you like, but 26% overall. Those are really good numbers. And those are the numbers that can produce a ceiling game, which he showed on Sunday. So it kind of, the floor is the same. I still think that there are situations where he reverts back into being, somewhat underwhelming, I guess I would say previously. Like that could definitely happen again because Manny is still there. Manny is a guy who earns targets, but the ceiling is better. And I think that's exactly what you were saying, where because that's kind of a proxy, or FOMO's a proxy for ceiling. And so I think that you bump up the ceiling, keep the floor the same. I would say probably bump down Manny's floor, but keep the ceiling the same. So widening the range of outcomes on both guys, but in a positive sense for Diggs and a negative sense for Manny.
So one thing you said that really kind of drew my attention was that you said that Diggs having like mediocre usage games were still within the range of outcomes for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of brings a follow-up question of, is there anyone other than maybe like Davante Adams where you feel like a 25% target share is virtually guaranteed every single week? Like, is it just, I mean, I guess Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
But so Diggs isn't in that level.
No.
But I think if you're not Davante and you're not Tyreek Hill, you're going to have issues.
Right.
Diggs might be like the number 3 though behind those 2 guys.
Devontae Smith is also guaranteed a 25% target share, which amounts to 4.5 targets.
That's true.
I would say Terry McLaurin also is kind of you bake in 25%, which doesn't matter as much because he's catching passes from Taylor Heineke and not Josh Allen. I still think that I think that Diggs, you put him down for 20% minimum because his target totals are 14, 8, 10, 10, 5, 11, 7, 8, 13. Those are all really good. So I would say, I think the reason why the underwhelming games could still be there is because the deep usage and the high leverage usage is not, I'm not as firm in saying that's not going away now. I think that's the difference for me. Because you can have a 7 target game and just be fine because you're not getting any high leverage stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main point for Diggs, and I really wish we had salaries.
Yeah.
Is that I think he's basically at the top of the second tier,
Hmm.
again with Devontae and Tyreek. And he was close to that already, but
Yeah. Yep.
he was like mid
He's
tier
more firm in that now, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Okay, so let's talk here about the Cowboys. Michael Gallup returned. Tough to know how to view them because the score was so lopsided here, like just outrageous. In the first half, CeeDee Lamb had 7 targets. Michael Gallup had 4. Amari Cooper had 3. So Gallup actually had more targets than Amari Cooper, which means he'll be involved. Dalton Schultz didn't have any first half targets for this team, and Lamb went nuts. The upside is still there, and I think that's important to note. Similar to Diggs, like these guys can still have ceiling games because Dak is amazing, because they're very good players. It's more so like, how do we view them from like a baseline perspective now that Gallup is healthy as well?
Yeah, that's tough. This team is, I mean, they've already had, I'll call it market share concerns, not really
Yeah.
production concerns, just because of the way that they share the ball. Lamb, again, I sort of mentioned him in comparison to Stephon Diggs. Lamb had the 2 touchdowns, 94 yards on his 7 targets, but it was 21% of the targets. And yeah, like things got out of hand quickly, but I don't think that that's really what led to a 21% target share for CD Lamb. That's not like what his issue is. His full season target share in his in is 23%.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was this basically the same. He just had the production on it, the efficiency. No downfield work for him in week 10, but 3 red zone targets, 2 end zone targets. So his workload's still really good, and I will always rank him above Amari Cooper whenever I can get there.
Yeah.
In lineups I was building this week with Dak, I'll settle for Amari when I can't get there with salary, but I'm always going to prioritize CD Lamb. So I still feel good with Lamb. His salary already was 7,700, so it was at the high end. And if it goes up from there because of the 2 touchdown game, I would have a hard time justifying that because we're looking at someone who, again, full season 22.5% target share. So
Yeah. Well, I'd have a hard time justifying it as like a standalone play, but for with Dak,
yes,
like because the ceiling is so good, I can still get there very easily. And I think
yeah,
that's true for all of these guys.
yeah. I think the better case is probably if I was playing a one off, I would
Yeah.
probably just play Stephon Diggs over CD Lamb.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
But for game stacks, like CD Lamb still within this offense, within any with any concerns that we have about Gallup and how the usage might break, he's still the guy for me,
Yeah.
which is a very safe take. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care what his salary is. I would prefer to be able to stack him with Dak whenever possible.
So I'm going to put out salaries here and you tell me where you disagree. I would say Lamb 77, Cooper 7,000, Gallup 6,000. What do you think about those?
I think those are fine, but
Okay.
I don't know if Lamb will stay at 77 after.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that again, anything above that, if he's creeping into the 8,000 range, I don't know if the usage is there. Whereas
Right.
if Stephon Diggs is 8,000, I would probably be more okay with it.
Yep, I agree with that. Let's talk here about the Patriots. Without Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson was featured for the Patriots. Played on 57% of the snaps. He had 20 carries for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 5 targets on 9 routes. So 5 targets, good. 9 routes, less good. But they threw like 5 times in that game because they're up so big. Stevenson had 6 red zone carries and 2 red zone targets. So 8 out of 16 chances inside the red zone for the team. Problem is we don't know what Damian Harris's role will be. I'm not convinced he did enough to like be DFS relevant when Harris gets back. What about you?
Yeah, so that's the discrepancy here. Is did he do enough to be DFS relevant
Right.
with Harris back? No. If you need him in season long, did he do enough? Sure.
Mhm.
You joked about the route rates. 32% of the routes on even with just the 9. Actually had 2 red zone targets there, like we said, and dropped what might have been a touchdown. That's not what you want to see for a back really trying to make the case for himself, but did overperform his expected rushing yards. Next Gen Stats had him at 69 expected rushing yards, which is nice enough, but he went ahead and got us 100 on those yardage. And I say us as if I didn't play him. I didn't think there was enough there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so again, I really don't anticipate a big enough role for Stevenson. the bigger thing is, and you and I don't really play Damian Harris as it is, but I would have a very, very hard time
Yeah, he was
justifying
crossed off already
Harris.
after last week when he was losing work before he got hurt, and
Yeah.
now he's crossed offer.
Yeah.
Cross it offer, more cross it off,
So,
crosser
yeah.
it off.
Sometimes when you cross something off, you just do the one line through it,
No.
and then you can still see what's there.
Yeah,
I
you
think you
wanna,
need to take a
like,
Sharpie over Damian Harris's name.
Sharpie and pen. This is permanent. Just dust it away. Never again. Make sure it's gone. But I think with Stevenson, like, if he were to clamp down the previous Damian Harris role, and I could believe it, I could maybe talk myself into him. But the odds I believe it are minimal at best. And even then, like, it's still very flawed.
Yeah.
I do think the one thing that's better for him is that, like, I can more realistically see him getting passing game work than Harris. So, like, that's a positive. But again, believing it is a different thing. Believing it's legit, believing they're not going to pull the rug out from under me.
Yeah, that's the real issue. And again, this is historically and this season has just not been a team where we see elevated snap rates. I believe the highest single game snap rate for this team is 61% for Harris back in week 4. Very few.
Wait, isn't that the game where he had like 5 carries for like 9 yards or something crazy like that? I can actually pull this up. It was something, I think it was something absurd where he had like 5 carries.
That was against Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah, that's why. Yeah, that makes sense.
4 carries, -4
like
yards.
They just don't give people good roles, which, I mean, more power to them. Their offense is working great. Why? I can't criticize it. It's more so like I just don't want to use it for DFS. In that game, 4 carries, 2 targets, 26 yards. Sick. Sick.
Yeah. So I think Stevenson will be the poster boy or a big waiver wire pickup, but this is not. Well, I guess let's talk about this. If Harris is out, what do you think?
Because he got passing game work. Yeah.
Okay.
And like that game got blowouty. That's not a word either. It got blowouty. So snap rate could have been better. So I think that, if Harris were to miss more time, I'd be okay going there for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, they play Thursday, so we could be looking at a single game slate with Stevenson in that situation. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Sure.
But if that game was on the main slate and we had no Harris against the
Falcons,
Falcons,
on the salary, and I'm guessing he'd be too high.
Yeah, he would bump up from 54.
Yeah. So that's where I'd be. Mark Ingram was a featured back for the Saints in the year 2021. That happened. He played 85% of the snaps. He had 14 out of 16 running back carries. Also tied for the team lead with 7 targets. The red zone role was also very good. He had 4 to 7 carries. He had 2 out of 6 targets. That's a really freaking good role. Alvin Kamara didn't practice at all this past week. It seems like there's a good chance he sits once again this week. Ingram may be the lead guy once again. So based on what you saw here in this game, Brandon, name that salary for Mark Ingram. They are facing Philadelphia on the road in week 11.
Yeah, that is a really, really good workload. 22 routes, which is 55%. That would be probably the main hangup of Mark Ingram, as if the receiving work wasn't there, but it was there a little bit before this week too. So I think that we could buy in and believe that it'll be there. The good red zone role, not a whole lot of competition for him. And also Ty Montgomery got banged up, so that helped, I'm sure, with the 85% snap rate. So we'll have to monitor that.
Got spun around, which ain't great. They kept trying to show it on the TV, and I was like, no, just cut this off. Stop it.
This is a really hard one to figure out because I don't love this offense.
Touchdown Trevor played well, man. You should love this offense.
They're 1.5 point road underdogs in a game with a total of 43.5 against a team that wants to run the ball and just basically keep things moving. So this is probably a spot where I will be too low on him given the specific matchup for next week, but I'm kind of like, can I just say 7,000 like a James Conner It's a
74,
better role.
I think 74.
I wouldn't.
So we're
I
not
wouldn't
that
hate
far
that.
off.
Yeah, I wouldn't
not
hate that. But
I think that if you give me a guy who's going to get legit passing game work, who is going to be decently efficient, 108 yards, that's good yardage upside, good red zone role. I think that once I account for your concerns, which I would echo with the offense and like the, facing a run heavy opposing team, I think 74 is where I settle in after accounting for those factors, which are agreed. I agree. Those are legit downgrades.
So they're going to have like a 21-point implied team total.
Mm-hmm.
If he really is 74, let's call it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's within that specific game. It might be like a very, very different paths to great usage, but DeAndre Swift this week, where like he was 73, I think.
I feel a lot better about the Saints offense than the Lions, though.
But like
a better matchup too.
The overall perception of like, yeah, he's there. I see the case for it, but man, I don't know if there are enough points here. And I like it's like a guy that I like. Same for like Leonard Fournette in that range this week. It's like I don't dislike this, but I think there are better plays. So if he is 74, I could very easily see myself not quite getting there. And I don't think he's gonna have a 6 in front of his salary either. So
I think he might actually. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
I think I could see like 66 settling in just because like it wasn't like a buzzy injury, that happened during the week. And I think those are the ones that tend to get juiced up a lot. I just checked. There's no slate up yet, but
yeah, I keep refreshing.
I wouldn't be shocked if he's in the 6,000 range. I wouldn't be shocked. I think
if he's in the 6,000 range, I think he's going to be one of the better plays again this week.
Yeah. So
but I do have my own concerns here to some degree.
And those are fair concerns. I think that's why I bump it down to 74, just to account for those. Because like if you give me 85% snap rate on a better offense, I'm going $8,400 with 74. So Jonathan Taylor. Oh, go ahead.
No, like I especially early on in the season, I tried to like look at snap rate and be like, that's basically your salary. So 85% snap rate, you're like, oh, okay, around 85, 100, but I don't think I'm there because I don't like the offense nearly as much.
And one reason not to apply the snap rate principle is because Jonathan Taylor used to play a low percentage of snaps, and he no longer does. He played a season high 84% of the snaps this week. He also set season highs in carries and targets, 37 adjusted opportunities, carries plus 2x targets. He had 8 out of 9 red zone chances. So like his red zone role remains stupid. If we look at 5 games since Taylor's snap rate, first one above 60%. He's at 84 on Sunday. He's at 143.2 yards from scrimmage per game. So we like Taylor a lot coming into this week. I think that once Ben was ruled out, we agreed Taylor in all formats. We had said Taylor in tournaments before above Najee. Once Ben was ruled out,
I had Taylor above him.
Okay, you did. I didn't.
Yeah.
Once Ben was ruled out, I had him above in all formats as well. So we were a consensus at that point. Now we're getting the role even better. So he was already high, but his actual role is getting better. So, like, do we just keep bumping him up more, or what do we do here?
Yeah, I think we have to. So if you look at the full season, so you don't even like cherry pick his best games, he is 8th among running backs in adjusted opportunities per game. But that if we take out Derrick Henry, he bumps up to 7th. Kamara, he would be 6th. And again, that doesn't even like look at his best sample.
Right.
We know that the red zone work is phenomenal. Watching that game on like whenever they get in the red zone, it just was like they're gonna just hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor here.
I mean, literally, there was only one play where they didn't. Well, they had 2 targets to him too. Yeah. So
it's like they're just gonna give him the ball inside the 10 or inside the 20, but like really once they get down there, it's like that's what those are the types of fantasy assets that we've had historically at running back that we don't really have anymore. And that's what makes guys back whenever it was like Le'Veon Bell and Christian McCaffrey and David Johnson. It's like, it's like you can't really make a case against these guys, even at like extreme salaries. So we know the talent's there. We know they want to get on the ball. I don't know if you asked me for a salary, but
they get Buffalo next week. So it's like a tough defense, but like I don't know if it matters with him, right?
I don't think it does either because he's good enough
Yeah.
to overcome it, and the usage is so strong.
Yeah.
Um, the only fear I still have, so like you could probably comp him to some degree to Derrick Henry of years past, where it's like, okay, if they really get floored from the get go, like maybe there's a defensive, like a pick six or a blocked punt, and Buffalo's up like 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. Like there's still a chance that they go to Naeem Hines much
Yeah.
more than you would want. But I don't think that we're to the point where like he's going to be off the field like Derrick Henry had been. So
Right.
I don't view it quite the same. So I don't really have a whole lot of knocks on Taylor, which is I know very safe to say, but historically I've been low on Taylor for these concerns.
Right.
So he basically was trending the opposite way of Aaron Jones, where like those two guys I
Right.
had
Right.
concerns with. Jones was regressing back into what I had historically thought of him. Taylor has just shattered through that. So I think the arrow's way up on Taylor, and it already had been. So
Yeah.
I really don't know what the salary would have to be for me not to want to play him.
Right.
But then it would open up into like what are the other guys at running back
What are
look
my
like on the
alternatives?
slate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me read you his yardage totals from week 4 on: 114, 169, 158,
Nice.
110, 122, 200, 126.
Pretty good.
He's at 110 plus in 7 straight games. 11 points from yardage alone on FanDuel, a minimum. Like that's absurd. It's great. I know you don't need to be told that Jonathan Taylor is good, but I'd like to tell you that Jonathan Taylor is good. Just we're breaking news here. I would say he's worth 10,000 even in that matchup. I'd consider paying more though.
Yeah. So boy, what's that total?
Okay, let me ask you
49.5.
this: Jonathan Taylor versus Buffalo or Christian McCaffrey against Washington?
Well, I was gonna say the reason I brought that up is so the Colts game has a 49.5 point over under. The Colts 7-point underdogs according to FanDuel Sportsbook. That's a bit heavy. But the Panthers Washington game has the lowest total of the week at 43.
Yeah.
So a 6.5 point gap there. Tighter spread, but I think look, if we're gonna want to play Christian McCaffrey, we're gonna have to talk ourselves into playing them with low totals anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'd go McCaffrey by a hair.
Yeah. I get it. I think I might go Taylor though.
But the fact that we're looking at Jonathan Taylor now as a 7-point underdog on the road against an extremely tough defense and comparing him to Christian McCaffrey, I never thought I'd get there. So
curious where I have this one at.
All the kudos to Jonathan Taylor for what he's been putting out there.
It's a 7-point spread.
Yep.
That's a lot. All right, cool.
It is.
Looks like I am betting the Colts this week. What could go wrong? They almost lost one of the Jags yesterday.
That's one of the biggest spreads of the week on the main slate.
I don't get it. Oh,
wow. Whatever. Actually, oh, no, never mind. I don't have it sorted by absolute spreads.
Oh, okay. All right.
I thought that there were 3 games with spreads greater than 2.5, but I was mistaken just because I sorted my spreadsheet.
Okay, so another check-in here on the Broncos with Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant being healthy, because we've only had now 3 games to sample with that. So quick update on that. Jeudy had 9 targets in week 10. Fant and Tim Patrick had 6. Cortland Sutton just 3. So if we look at the games since Jeudy returned, because Jeudy played like half the snaps in week 1, so it's fair to omit that one. If we look at just weeks 8 and 10, Jeudy has 22% of the overall targets and 30% of the air yards. Leads the team in both those. Noah Fant second in target share at 17%. Tim Patrick is at 15%. Sutton is tied with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon at 12%. So Judy's role is good, but not great. And I think that that's annoying when it's not in an offense we tend to target. So I still like him, but I can't love him when these factors are in place. What about you?
Yeah, again, I'm not great with comps, and I don't actually have one, but I feel like the Jerry Jeudy good target share, undesirable offense for the most part, but going to be down in like the low sixes where it's
Yeah.
right before you're digging into like the scraps at receiver and really trying to talk yourself into guys. There are always players like that. Maybe like a Brandon Cooks,
Jarv in the past.
Jarv, those types of plays where it's like, for a cash game, for a one-off, like I would rather play Jerry Jeudy than just punt at receiver, of course.
Right.
But there's not a whole lot here, and I don't know what's going on with Cortland Sutton, but they're not wanting to throw him the ball.
Yeah, I think Sutton's off the map for DFS. I think it's just Fant and Jeudy on this entire team. I know that Javonte Williams outsnapped Melvin Gordon this week, but I don't put too much into that personally. Melvin fumbled, and that's probably part of the reason why that happened. But I think to me, it's just those two, and I don't feel great about either. I think Fant is also, again, fine. If he stays in the 57 range, I talked about him a lot on Thursday. I wound up going down to Dan Arnold and Freiermuth more, getting up to Pitts. So, like, I liked him, but, like, that mid-range at tight end is just kind of, like, very awkward, very no man's landy. And, realistically, am I going to be super stoked to use him? Probably not, unless it's, like, a really good spot. I think that he's worth that salary. I just don't know if I'll be jazzed to use him.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, look, we're entering week 11. We've got a lot of situations just figured out by now. This is one where there's been some change, but there's also not enough to have something super, super actionable where it's like, yeah, Noah Fant in the right situations. I like him, but if we're going to have access to someone like a Dan Arnold at 5,100, the case for Fant is a lot worse because effectively there is no difference maker at tight end, like from guys with salaries that basically, if you're not like one of the big five, like everyone's the same, and it's all just sort of match up and who cashes in, because nobody has yardage upside outside of the top tier. Nobody has significantly better red zone equity aside from maybe Hunter Henry at this point. So it's basically just the same, and then at that point you just take some savings. So I don't know if I'm going to play Fant like the rest of the year, even though I like him.
Yeah, that's where I was this week, and it stinks. I do like him too, but I think just kind of no man's land at that point. Sunday was our first game with Aaron Rodgers and Marquez Valdez-Scantling together since week 3, and MVS did have a bigger role than he had last week. He was about half the routes last week. He was on 26-38 this week. Just 2 targets. Both of them were deep. Shocker. Did catch one for 41 yards. He went full MVS. That's kind of how it goes. That's normal. That's what we expect, but it's not the kind of role we want for DFS. So can you get to anybody? Can you get to MVS? Anybody else on this team outside of Devontae and AJ Dillon right now, even in game stacks of the Packers?
No.
Like hypothetically, you loved Aaron. Like, let's just say hypothetically, you wanted to use Aaron Rodgers on a slate. Would you stack with anyone outside of Devontae and AJ Dillon? Because I don't think I would.
No, there's not enough there. For anybody. This is like the team that you just see 30% for Devontae. Sometimes people get up to like 20% in a single game. Like this week we had, Aaron Jones at 17%, but Aaron Jones is kind of their secondary pass catcher. And then everyone else is 11%, 8%, 6%. That's not enough. And again, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the perfect high ADOT receiver, but a high ADOT receiver can mean different things. For him, he's a high ADOT receiver, so he's going to get his 2-3 targets. They're going to come at a high ADOT. It's going to be hyper volatile, but 2 downfield targets and 2 total targets, like that's not enough. That's not what Jim and I talk about whenever we're looking for downfield work. We want downfield work in addition to like a 20% target share, an 18% target share, maybe for like a value guy. If it's, I think that there's a perception sometimes where all it takes is one, and it does to some degree, but realistically, if Marquez Valdez-Scantling catches like a 50-yard touchdown, he might not do anything else the rest of the game. That's still not going to get you there. So like, you still need the volume, and it's not there for him or anybody else.
And the checklist we make is 85 yards or 2 touchdowns at wide receiver. You almost definitionally cannot get that on one catch unless you have an 85-yard touchdown. So like all it takes is one is a phrase that's used often, and probably like a thought process that's used often, but it's actually not true. Like unless it's again a 99-yard touchdown or whatever, like 86,
or
probably not.
Yeah, or like a small slate. If we're looking at like the afternoon
Sure.
slate, something like that. But if you look at 12 games, you don't make an optimal lineup at receiver. Like even if your salary's 5,000, if you have 9 FanDuel points, like a 30-yard touchdown or whatever, like it's not enough.
Or even 11.
Yeah,
because if he gets 50 yards on a touchdown, that's 11 and a half.
Yeah, like, I think like nobody made it below 12 and a half last year, or like one
for a perfect FanDuel lineup.
No, a Sunday Million winning lineup, I think.
Okay.
From my
I was gonna
data.
say like no one made it below 18 last year for perfect lineup.
For a Sunday Million, I think 1 or 2 guys were like below 13, but like it takes more than that. So I know we're kind of fixated on MVS, but this applies to a lot of other players too.
Very much does. Yeah, for sure. So it's really just Devontae and Dillon on that team right now. The Chiefs ran more heavy personnel on Sunday night. Got my boy Noah Gray in the end zone, which I'll always take. They also scaled back Mecole Hardman's role quite a bit. He played a season-low 31% of the snaps. Byron Pringle played 60% of the snaps. He ran twice as many routes as Hardman. Actually, Josh Gordon ran more routes than Hardman did, which is woof. Pringle just 5 targets, but are you willing to use him on full slates now? Because Mecole's gone. Like, we can just say that. But, like, would you use Pringle at all on full slates? Or are we on whoever's at running back, Kelsey and Hill?
Yeah, what happened with Hardman? Like, he looked good when he did get the ball. So I don't know if he got
a couple times early. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, a little bit surprising. Maybe we'll get some news there, but
yeah.
I don't know if I'm quite there with Pringle. 2 downfield targets, 1 end zone target. Like, we want to talk about the Packers having minimal relevant DFS pieces. I feel better about whoever's the third man up for them, for the Chiefs, or even the second man, I guess. But like, that's not like. It's got to be third with Tyreek.
Fourth, if you count Darrell Williams getting his 9 targets.
So this also is like not the Chiefs' offense of old, where I would have been much more open to it. So I don't think that there's enough for Pringle either, because next week it could be Josh Gordon if because he's been trending up. So I'm not going to be there on a full slate. What about you?
Yeah. I don't think so. Because, like, even when Hardman had a really good role, like, he was getting targets, stuff like that, there was no yardage upside. And, like, I kind of feel like Pringle will wind up being in that same bucket. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I think that the main change would be, like, on a single game slate, Pringle becomes the de facto, like, lower salaried guy you use on the Chiefs. Because, like, we're looking there. But, like, outside of that, they get Dallas next week, so I'll have to think long and hard about this. But I think for right now, I am likely omitting those super low salary guys.
Well, we can't name that salary and get any confirmation. But what? So Byron Pringle,
5,000.
He was 52 on like the week long slate, I believe. So I'm not saying he'll go up, but if he's 55, probably a bit.
And that's where like Gallup was this week, and I had, I think, like 10% Gallup, and I feel better about Gallup than I do about Pringle. Yeah. So, like, yeah, I feel like I would have a hard time getting there. Because, like, they could also just, like, reverse the roles again and go back to Mecole. They could go to anyone. I don't know. So,
that's just how this offense has always been for a long, long time. You know,
just not DeMarcus Robinson. That's all I'll say is no DeMarcus Robinson. That's the only definitive. No. He had like 100 or he had like 200 yards in a game once, and I don't think he's gotten 200 combined since then. No. But I think, I mean, we might get CH back this week. That'd be kind of fun, I guess. But like, I don't think I can get to those lower salary dudes in this spot. So we'll see. That's gonna be a fun game. We'll talk a lot about on Thursday. Russell Wilson made his return. Less fun. Obviously really struggled, as you know. Averaged negative 0.38 passing net expected points per dropback. He completed 1 of 9 deep passes in this game. He gave 8 targets to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, which we like, but also gave 8 to Gerald Everett, which is kind of interesting and different. So really struggled. What's your level of trust in this offense right now?
Trust is not the word I think I would ever use for the Seattle offense.
I trusted them this week. Obviously, it was okay because other stuff went well, but I trusted them more than I should have.
I don't know. I mean, trust is a stretch for me because the way that Russell Wilson gets there is by throwing 4 touchdowns on 24 attempts for like 280 yards. And with the market shares being good, but the pass volume generally being low, the way that Lockett and Metcalf get there is by being hyper efficient on their limited chances.
Yeah.
They're not really a team I trust. They're a team that I feel like that I fear missing out on. That's basically how I view them. So that's probably more of a me thing than it is anything
like
else.
I trust that Lockett and Metcalf are going to get volume, and I trust that they'll be efficient in that because Russ is so good, which allows me to trust the whole offense. Like, it doesn't mean I think that they have a high floor, but it means that I think I'm not going to regret it in terms of like, oh, I think the usage will justify this move.
Okay, if it's just usage, then sure. So that I think that's probably to say that I'm not worried about the Gerald Everett usage eating into Metcalf and Lockett.
I think I'm more asking like, do you trust the performance given how much they struggled this week? Like, do you trust them to perform this week? They get Arizona at home, which is a potentially fun game if Kyler is going.
This is a tough one. So Russ had a 12.3 ADOT. Did he have 490 air yards?
Sweet.
So if you look at his expected completion rate according to Next Gen Stats and adjust for drops and everything like that, he was at 60.3%.
Yep.
Not good. League average this week was 69%, which is nice. I think just a first look at this slate, Russ is not going to be a quarterback that I want to play. Unless his salary remains at 75 or goes down, which I don't anticipate.
And what about the receivers?
I'm always good with Metcalf and Lockett, although I'm pretty sure Lockett is generally the play against the Cardinals.
So what you're saying is that the performance on Sunday combined with the Seahawkiness of them is enough where you don't want to get to Wilson, but it's not enough where you're going to pass up the receivers. Am I correct?
Well, I'm not going to. So it's a hard question to answer. I'm probably making it harder than I need to with trust, just because it's a very specific word.
Well, I got rid of that word. I meant like the way I phrased it just now. Do you agree with that? Okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, do you consider DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett one-off plays for you? Because I generally don't.
I had them as, again, this is the one thing that didn't go that well this week. I had those one-offs this week, and I do have them as one-offs decently often. Yes, I
typically don't.
So if you want like a level of comparison, I am far more willing to have those two as one-offs than the Cowboys receivers. I'm more likely to stack with Dak than I am have Russ as a quarterback, but I'm more likely to have those guys as one-offs because their target floor is sick and they have the same upside.
I agree with that.
Okay. So let's go to situations to monitor here. Talk about some other stuff that stuck out to you from either Sunday or Thursday. What else did you see when looking through some data?
So T.Y. Hilton's a little bit back, not to the point where I want to use him, but it's more that we've been monitoring Michael Pittman a lot this season. Hilton had 5 targets on 26 routes, tied for a team high, 36% air yard share in week 10. In 3 games with Hilton playing, Michael Pittman Jr. is still the wide receiver 1, so I'm not that concerned. It's a 23% target share, which is decent, 29% air yard share. Hilton's at a 14% target share in those games. Still getting really good downfield work per target, but again, not enough for Hilton. Just more like tracking Pittman. I still think I'm there, but a little bit lower although Hilton could, in theory, help the offense be more efficient. James Robinson coming back from his heel injury, 58% of the snaps, all 3 red zone carries. So I thought he was very oversalaried at 75 this week. I will still think that, but he's probably going to trend back up moving forward. Just not really enough there for me within this offense. DeAndre Swift led the Lions in pass routes, which you absolutely love to see. He had 27, tied for a team high in targets with 6 to go, along with 33 carries. Had good yardage output, but did not overperform from an expectation standpoint on the carries.
Godwin Igwe stealing all those touchdowns. Go Cats. There we go.
Yeah.
I had to wear the Northwestern shirt just for my boy Godwin here.
I'm sure you've never worn anything Northwestern before.
No, definitely not. Not even once. I bought this for this show.
Where'd you go to college?
I don't know. I'm in the Northwest right now, so I can wear the shirt doubly. It's great.
Yeah, just cut off the N so it just says Northwest.
Northwester.
For the Steelers pass catchers, because Chase Claypool did not practice this week, so that's not necessarily the most promising thing moving forward. James Washington led the team with 48 pass routes, but had just 6 targets. Deontay Johnson, 47 routes, 13 targets. Love to see that for Deontay. Ray McLeod, 12 targets on 41 routes. Pat Freiermuth nearly doubled up Eric Ebron in routes, 28 to 15, had 9 targets. So, again, quarterback issues.
The quarterback thing is interesting, too, because Jay Glazer was saying he didn't think Ben would be cleared for next week.
Oh.
Which is wild. It's not a 10-day thing, I guess it was allegedly, because Ben has said that he's vaccinated, but when has Ben ever told a lie? So Mason Rudolph, negative 0.20, passing at expected points per dropback. If he starts again, do Deontay's 13 targets matter?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's kind of the crux of what I was going to get at is we liked Freiermuth and entering the weekend, and then I jumped off pretty much entirely and just went to Dan Arnold once we got the quarterback downgrade. Rudolph did not look good. That whole you can't tie with the Lions, that's rough. That's just a rough look. I know that the conditions weren't fantastic, but not very good.
Against an injured Jared Goff.
I would say Deontay, he was 74 this week. I can't get there again. I need that to come down, which it probably won't after the 13 targets. Freiermuth probably won't go up significantly, but if he's back in the 5,000 range, again, we don't have the slate, so it's hard to know for sure.
Well, they're not in the main slate, so that helps.
Oh,
they're on Sunday night. Oh, a feature game between Justin Herbert and Mason Rudolph, or Dwayne Haskins. Who can say?
Who could say? And then AJ Brown had just 4 targets despite lining up against Marshawn Lattimore on only 8 of 24 routes. So they didn't really get him the ball outside of that anyway. Marcus Johnson's going to get a lot of buzz, but not going to chase that.
Why not?
Either.
6 targets, led the team, 100 yards. What's wrong with that?
I don't know, Jim.
Number 2 pass catcher in a somewhat inefficient passing offense, who might get you 6 targets.
I mean, 6 targets on 17 routes, 59% of the routes. That's not enough, Jim.
So he's basically Julio. Good. All right. Rashad Bateman kept his nice role even with Sammy Watkins being back. Bateman, 29 routes and 47 dropbacks. That's not ideal, but it's also not terrible, I would say. Watkins, 14 routes, made some pretty key errors, which may influence things and keep Bateman's role more steady. Bateman had 8 targets. One of those is deep. I feel like I'm fine continuing to be in on him as long as his salary remains low. If it creeps up, then I'll have more concerns about, hey, he's not getting a ton of deep work, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm okay with it for right now. That's where I'm at with Bateman at this point. You looked like you wanted to say something on him.
No.
Nope. Okay, cool. Leonard Fournette played a bunch of snaps on Sunday despite a negative script. We've talked about this a bit where I was like, okay, is Jew going to come in if they're down? It didn't. Fournette's snap rate was at 64%. Basically, Ronald Jones is the one who got Thanos. Fournette had 11 carries and 9 targets. Don't need to go into it much, but I do think that it's a bump up for Fournette, knowing he will still be out there should things break against them the way they did this past week. Not a role change.
Has Ronald Jones not already been Thanos?
he still like would pop up for like 7 carries every now and then, and it'd really annoy me every time. Like every time I saw the 2 on the back of a Buccaneers running back jersey, I get annoyed because it's either Gio or Ronald Jones, and I get annoyed whenever it's one of them. So
Well, you'll get to watch closely because they're playing Monday night against the Giants as 11-point favorites. That'll be a
why
good
is that a
one.
Monday night game?
That'll be a
Who
good
was
one
asking?
to.
Oh, because it's the Daniel Jones repeat game of his coming out party in his first start when he went nuts. And everyone's like, "Oh man, we were wrong about Daniel Jones."
He's already made he was put in the Hall of Fame after that game.
Can you take him out? Can he take himself out? Can he sack himself from the Hall of Fame? I don't know. We'll see. Not a rule change.
Himself in any circumstance.
True. But we did get confirmation that there was no rule change for Elijah Moore because he's been playing really well. That has not led to a change in his playing time. He's still rotating with other guys to the Jets. He ran around about half the dropback Sunday. The production is very good. I would expect eventually that route number to increase, but I'm not going there on a bad offense until it does. So I'm waiting on Elijah Moore still. With Ben out, we talked about that one before. Laviska Shenault did run a bit more in the slot this week. 31% snap rates in the slot this week. It was 27% last week, 27 or 20% before that. Did I say something stupid?
You said, I read it as he
played 31% of the snaps.
His snap rate's been creeping up back to 31%. Which I would have believed.
Snap rate from the slot, 8 targets for Laviska is most since week 6. 2 of those were deep. He had 15 yards on those 8 targets. So I don't know why I bothered noting this, but Jamal Agnew was still super involved. 5 targets, 3 deep targets for Agnew. He had that long touchdown too. So I'm just letting you know that we're still avoiding it, but Laviska might get more slot route or snot. That was snot snaps. That was the excuse people were using for why Laviska hasn't done anything is, oh, hey, he's not running the slot anymore. Turns out when he goes to the slot, he's still not getting yardage. So there is that. Let's go to philosophical changes and start off with Washington. They were gonna establish it despite facing the Bucs. Their early down first half pass rate was 48%. That's down from 54% for the full year or before their bye. And again, it's against the freaking Bucs, and it worked. So it's probably going to stick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, likely done for the year now. Terry McLaurin is dealing with a shoulder injury during the game. Wouldn't be shocked if they continue to run, but I don't think that's good for anyone because I haven't seen enough from Antonio Gibson to feel good. I know he's good this week, but I don't trust him yet for DFS. I don't want to use him in DFS. And it's also bad for their opponents if they're going to run more because that slows things down. So where are you at in Washington right now based on that run-heavy approach this week?
Speaking of slowing things down, Washington started off as one of the fastest teams in football. From weeks 1 through 4, they ranked 3rd in non-garbage time pace, which again is when your pre-snap win probability was between 20 and 80%. They are 24th since week 5 in that number. So if they're going to run the ball, and they're going to slow things down, it just ruins the other side of the game. Not that Washington football team games have been the most stackable to begin with, even when they were playing at faster paces. But this really does kind of derail things. Next week they play the Panthers. That's a bit of a concern, just because the Panthers can be susceptible. So that's going to be the hardest question we have to answer for Christian McCaffrey is against a run-heavy team that wants to slow things down, grind some clock, and with the goal line concerns potentially, is he really the best? Is he really like Christian McCaffrey? So I'll have to nitpick that game a good bit.
That game has a low total for a reason. I think that's what we're saying here overall. It's pretty grim. You had some notes on the Raiders here and their pace. What are you seeing with them recently?
Yeah, I already mentioned the Panthers and their tendency to run the ball a lot more, but play at a faster tempo. So that was the other noteworthy mention I wanted to make. But the Raiders led the NFL in non-garbage time pace in Week 10. They've now ranked top 4 in pace the past 3 games. Under John Gruden, they ranked 20th in pace and 5th in pass rate. Since then, they're still 8th in pass rate, so virtually no change there, but they're 1st overall in that sample. So they've been playing faster. They're pass heavy. It's been a pretty fun team overall. Again, not flawless. They still have some market share concerns, but that could help Darren Waller, and also their games be more stackable. And that could be very relevant when they play the Bengals next week. That total is 49. There are 5 games with totals of at least 49 on the main slate, according to FanDuel Sportsbook. That leaves 7 at 46.5 or worse. So we could kind of have our research cut down a lot if we just focus on the games with the higher totals, especially because of those 5 games with the total of at least 49, only one has a spread greater than 2.5 right now, and that's the Colts-Bills game.
Let's party. So you had asked me in the private chat on this stream, hey, should we do like a game scroll since there's no salaries up? And I said no, but I'm going to override myself. I think we should do that. Let's actually go through, in lieu of a salary scroll, where we go through the salaries on FanDuel and say, hey, this stands out to me. We don't have to go game by game, but I think we should like kind of just look at this slate overall and shout out the games you think are going to be like the focal points for this week. The games we might be considering for the bookmaker section, like our key stacks for next Sunday's slate. So let's just kind of go through here and see what stands out.
The standout game for sure is going to be the Chiefs and the Cowboys. That total is 55.5 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Tight 2.5 point spread for the Chiefs at home. So that is going to be the standout because the other, well, I won't talk about the other games, but we'll talk about why that one is the best one, because there are really no concerns on either side unless you're still worried about the Chiefs.
So I have like a thing. I don't know why I said it that way. I have I project offensive efficiency for both sides. I don't know why that was the way I decided to phrase that. I project offensive efficiency for both sides, and then can combine that to get like the overall game efficiency effectively. If I do that for next week without adding in what happened this week, although it'd be good for both teams, it'll only make it more encouraging. It's at like 0.205 net expected points per play between those two teams.
That sounds good. And even for the uninitiated, that's good.
Yeah. And neither team is super slow paced. We have some concerns about like where the ball is going, stuff like that. And Dan Quinn's a smart defensive coordinator, so I feel like we'll see a better game plan than what the Raiders had last night against this Chiefs offense. And my numbers account for the fact that like they've been rough this year. Like it knows that, and it still views this game as being like a wide margin better. No other game is above 0.15. This one's at 0.20, like per play overall.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the game of the week again. So that puts the Cowboys in basically the best game, which is going to be very common. I'm trying to whip up my own. I have some game scores that I run. I'm trying to get those up just because we're lagging behind. We're trying to get something to discuss. But I would imagine this game is going to rate out very easily with just like the best overall game score imaginable for this week because of the tight spread, because of the good trends overall. So I'm almost there, but I really don't know how this game doesn't just be the number one very easily. So
what's the spread in that game?
2.5
in favor of Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
What do you think? You think it's Dallas?
My numbers have Dallas by 5, which seems not right. Oh, that's because I hadn't switched home field yet. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I hadn't switched home field yet. That's why. Okay, so that's that. Other game that stands out, Minnesota Green Bay is pretty fun. The pace there will be underwhelming at best. But like we know where the ball is going. We know how to stack that game perspective. That's a pretty good game. I like that one.
Okay, yeah. So that was one of the. So I think the other 4 games that we have with totals of at least 49. That's this Vikings Packers game, Seahawks Cardinals, which I think we have at least concerns with Seattle. We have a spread concern potentially with the Bills and Colts, and then we have really not a whole lot of concerns, I think, with Raiders Bengals. But I run some game scores that I look at. It's basically your Z score, which is like your standard deviations above and below the main slate. I look at over/under, implied team totals, pace and pass rate. So the pace and pass rate's not updated. It's just using what we had entering this week. But KC Dallas is getting a 4.85.
Okay.
For context, second up is Seattle and Arizona at a 2.15. And then third is the Raiders and Bengals at a 0.74. So basically, this game, the Chiefs-Dallas game, is breaking the numbers here.
Yes.
It's going to be the game of the week without any question. And I do think that there are concerns everywhere else. So I don't
There's
think
at least one concern. Yeah.
There's at least
else,
one
yeah.
concern. So I don't think anything's going to be able to best it.
I don't think so either. And it probably shouldn't either. Okay. So let's go to a note to future me to close things up here, Brandon. Based on what we learned this week, based on what we talked about during the show, based on your look at the week 11 slate, what are things you're trying to remind yourself once you're filling out lineups later on this week?
Ignore popularity projections for Dallas and Kansas City, basically. I don't think that they'll get that. Like, CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper didn't project to be very popular. I don't actually know off the top of my head where they wound up. I should have had this pulled up. Lamb, 13% in the Sunday Million. Cooper, 9%. So, yeah. I feel like people don't like the market shares, which I totally get, but that's the only knock that they have. And then I would say really nitpick every other game at the top, because right now I might prefer Raiders Bengals to those other games with like higher profile offenses.
Like a Mixon Waller stack?
Mixon Waller, we get Jamar Chase back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot. Well, the team goes on by 1 week, and I forget who's on the team.
Yeah, and it's very possible that other people will too, just because, sort of that out of sight, out of mind situation.
Yep. My note to future me is something we talked about at the beginning, where we're talking about Mike Evans and how he became less of a good play as the week went along. Same thing with Najee Harris, same thing with Pat Freiermuth. My note is don't get locked in. Don't tie myself to players, get infatuated with the idea of using them to the point where I ignore other stuff, other factors. So I want to remind myself, like, yes, don't forget what you were saying. Make sure you account for the reasons you were there. But if those reasons change, if factors that are in consideration, part of the reason you know that player changes, then shift. If James Conner loses Kyler Murray, something I kind of thought the Cow was going to play this week. If he loses Kyler Murray, knock him down a decent amount. If he loses DeAndre Hopkins, knock him down. If Pat Freiermuth loses his quarterback and has Mason Rudolph as his quarterback, knock him down. I think that, like, don't do it for anything. And we've talked about that, not ignoring what we talked about. But when there are tangible changes, make sure I'm properly accounting for them and adjusting. I think I did a decent job of that this week, but I want to make sure that that's something that I continue to do in the future.
Yeah, and I kind of like almost brag about this Monday show because it's extremely helpful for me to go over all of this information, all of this stuff while it's fresh, looking at sort of untainted, like, well, here's what I think about the Broncos. And I like Jerry Jeudy fine. I like Noah Fant fine. But sometimes, like, if Noah Fant gets talked up a ton, for example, I'm like, I need to play Noah Fant, even though I'm like kind of lukewarm on him. Yeah. Those are the types of things that I try to advise against, and I try not to fall into myself. But yes, even whenever we talk about situations on Thursday, like James Conner, we both had him in our loves. I didn't really love him by Sunday because a lot changed about our expectation and about the other just sort of holistic parts of the slate. So if the change caveat is key, if things don't change, don't forget that you liked someone or didn't like someone. Nothing's going to change, presumably, with Noah Fant. But, like, for example, if people are loving him, and
then Drew Lock starts.
Yeah. Or even, like, if nothing changes, and you're not on someone, those are the types of things that I fall into very easily. And it's good not to chase those situations.
We all are influenced by people, but just like trying to stick to, okay, if you know why you're not there, stick to that for sure. Yeah. That is all that we have here for today on this Week 10 recap podcast. But as alluded to, we are going to be back here once again on Thursday to talk about that Chiefs versus Cowboys game and talk about all the other games on the Week 11 slate and break down AJ Dillon, where those salaries wound up as well. To get that podcast, you can watch it live on YouTube at 10 a.m. on Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern, I should say, as a now West Coast guy for the next 3 hours. I got to say, on the Eastern time, 10 a.m. Eastern time on the FanDuel YouTube page. It'll be up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that as well. To get that, just search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, leave us a rating, review, and hit subscribe because that does help us out a bunch. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your single game Monday night lineups. We'll talk to you once again on Thursday to get you set for Week 11. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.